Welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live here Thursday, September 19th. Coming to us now from the battleground state of Michigan, it's law professor Jen Taub. She's a professor now at Wayne State University in Detroit. Her YouTube channel is where you can see Jen Taub live every day in the morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, also Substack, and a lot of other stuff. Jen, nice to see you. How's Michigan?
Michigan is awesome. It's great to be in a battleground state because who doesn't want to, whenever they turn on the television, see only political ads? It's awesome, Dean.
And I can't even imagine what it's like now because I was in Atlantic City in mid-August, third week of August, and it was in the same market as Philly. And the ads were nonstop, and that was August. Now it must be like nonstop. That's all you see.
You're a New Yorker. And I lived in Massachusetts, so no one cared about us, and it was nice. It's nice.
Well, now you're inundated. Look, and you're in an important state. And today, literally tonight, Vice President Harris is in your state in the Detroit suburb with Oprah Winfrey at 8 p.m. Eastern Time doing the live stream event that they're uniting people around the country.
And did you know our friend Julie Zebrick? You've met her on Nerds before. Maybe she is there because she helped organize Jewish women for Kamala, and she is a diehard K-Hive person. She had like Mamas for Kamala back in 2019. So, I guess some people, some of the organizers of these events could send people there. So maybe she's part of the studio audience, and some people will be watching on Zoom. Do you know which suburb it is? Did they say?
It says Detroit suburb, but they were not disclosing the location for whatever. I don't know why, but
I try to get it out of Julie. Like I'm in a Detroit suburb right now, and I'm like looking around. Is that person walking the dog, Oprah?
Right. he says there's school by you. It could be anything. So look, I hope it goes well today. Soon to be Vice President Tim Walz was in North Carolina. We played some clips, but North Carolina is in the news a lot because of Mark Robinson. And I wonder, so you saw, I went through it all in detail with everyone on the show, what was in there. And, my point was that it's awful, but what he said before Trump endorsed him was awful too. And Trump endorsed him, and the Republican base, 65% voted for the guy, even though anti-race stuff, anti-Semitic garbage, anti-LGBT stuff off the charts, vileness and all that. And now it's like doubled and tripled down, but same horrible person. And so what's your reaction to what you read?
You know how Kamala Harris says, who someone is for what they fight for, based on who they fight for. You also know who someone is by what their limits are. And in this instance, the Republican Party, as you know, or at least the Republicans voting in North Carolina, not only voted for him as, he was lieutenant governor, but more recently in the primary. And at that time, as you know, he had been publicly a Holocaust denier. We saw videos of him preaching was he preaching at a church or speaking at a church? I'm not sure what that was, but he was it looked like in front of a large audience. It felt like he was, if I recall, at a church. But anyway, he was saying that some people actually deserved the death penalty for being gay. And he was being killed. And it's outrageous. And we could go on and on. He is intolerant. He is a bigot. He said terrible things about MLK Jr. And so, as I said, we know who a person is by their limits. The only thing, and also we also knew that he often went to visit a porn store. Now, you know what? If you want to go to a porn store, whatever, you do you. But the Republican Party is supposed to stand against that, right?
Right.
I'm not going to say any of the other things were good. And then the only thing that's a limit for the Republican Party, apparently, is that he was into watching trans women have sex. That's it. That's the limit.
But now he's a devout Christian, so they're going to forgive him. They will forgive you. The far right will forgive you for anything except for being Muslim or Jewish or not being them. If you're one of them, you can get away with anything. If you're not one of them.
Yeah, what do you think it is? Do you think it's the trans sex that they're upset about? Or do you think they're upset about the fact that he said he was a black Hitler? Or these are the new things? Or the fact that he was a peeping Tom? Which is the part, Dean? I think it's the fact that he said, I think it's the fact that they are really doubling down on their hatred of the LGBTQ community. And it was the fact that he was almost literally embracing that is their limit. Or what do you think it is about this particular revelation for them?
I don't know if they're going to drive him out of the race or not, to be honest.
They
And we'll
can't.
see,
Tonight's
unless you
the deadline.
right. And even if it was weeks ago, I wonder, there was a comment I read for people online where from the New Post today, where there was a discussion about, do they believe a woman who was raped? And he said, the moral of the story is don't F a white bitch. And maybe
Yes.
using the term white bitch will not, like on the white right, they'll use that term to describe women. But for you, a
Yes.
black person, to say something about a white woman, that would get you
Oh,
killed in the Jim Crow era. So,
you think
so
that
we'll
might
we'll
be it?
see. I think, look, what's really going on is that he's down by 8 and 9 in two recent polls to
Oh,
Josh
I
Stein.
see.
He's hurting Donald Trump. If Trump loses North Carolina, it's an early night for us. We don't have to wait 3 days. It's 16 electoral votes. No Democrats won since 2008. It is neck and neck, although, Biden barely, they did a little bit of campaigning, not a lot, and he only lost by a little over a point. This state is in play. And now with Josh Stein likely going to win by 8 points, it's bringing a lot of people out. And it could go. So the 16, if Vice President Harris wins that, she could literally lose Michigan and Wisconsin. All she needs to do is win Pennsylvania as well, and that's it. But if things are going that well in North Carolina, she's going to pick up another state. She just picks up Nevada or somewhere else, and it's done. So let me ask you: we're 47 days to the end of the
Yeah.
election. Then there's the recount. Then there's a civil war. I tell everyone that's going to take a little while. But besides that, how do you feel about 47 days out? Where do you feel? How do you feel right now?
It's so funny that you asked that, because as soon as you said that, I'm more actually concerned about what's going on in the Middle East right now. Really very concerned
That
about that for the people there. And I
the
know
mid.
that's not the tough question you asked me, but so that tells
Well,
you
if you want
that
to talk about that, go ahead.
no,
Tell me
no, no,
what's your
no,
view on that.
I
My
don't want to
fiance
talk
is in
about it.
Haifa right now, where she's
Oh
40 minutes
no.
from Hezbollah missiles. But
It's really,
she's in the north.
it's awful
I
all
don't think it's
around.
going to be war. I talked to her. I said to her what the media is reporting here. She goes, no, she goes, it's not. There's not a sense that there's going to be a real war right now.
Okay,
That's American media. I just talked to her like 2 hours ago.
good.
I said, the media is like, she goes, no, that Nasrallah, the hell of Hezbollah spoke. And he goes, one day we're going to get our revenge, but it's not now. And he also said, because she translated from Arabic, that he said the same deal is on the table. You withdraw from Gaza and we will stop firing missiles into Israel, because that's the deal we've offered from the beginning. And that's part. So this just stays out there. And at some point, will Hezbollah try to get revenge in Iran? Maybe, but it's not going to be a war. She said there's
Okay.
no sense in the country right now. There's a war coming.
Okay. I'm also just concerned about we're getting farther and farther and farther away from the direction we want to go there. But back to 47 days. Look, I mean, we never want to trust the polls, right? And we
Right.
never want to be overconfident, but there's no reason why, we shouldn't celebrate or savor sort of the small victories along the way. And the numbers are looking good. The Fed just cut rates 50 basis points,
I know.
despite the fact that as you know, some people are booing that because they think and vote against their own interests, but things are going in the right direction for this country. And I think that's going to help Kamala. And I think we just have to, we're getting pretty close to the time where if you're just sitting on the sidelines, it's time to sign up and knock on doors, or do a phone bank. Even if you just do it once, you'll really appreciate this process. And if you are someone and you're listening here, you probably are quite interested in getting Kamala Harris elected. And so my two things would say do something, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like Michelle Obama said, and
Do something. Yeah.
also do something. But also, I think you should look really closely. If you're thinking of a third party, look really closely at the recent interviews with Jill Stein, including Mehdi Hasan's interview, where she would not actually condemn Vladimir Putin. Also look at the
I know.
interview with someone, I don't know the name of the host on the Breakfast Club, where Jill Stein didn't know how many members of Congress and the Senate there were. She thought the total was 600, which is just like off the charts
535, but
ridiculous.
all right.
What?
She's a joke. It's 535, but she's a joke. She's a
Yes.
joke, Jill Stein. Today, by the way, the uncommitted movement in Michigan, for what it's worth, I was going to cover it more tomorrow or next week. They came out in Michigan and said that they didn't endorse Harris, but they told people don't vote for Trump, and they even said don't vote third party. That Trump. But they won't endorse
So,
Harris. So what they're
right.
saying is, so Harris is the lesser of the concern. Trump will kill more Palestinians, which is true. Harris is the vice president. People hold her responsible for the Biden himself. I just had on a few days ago, Harris Mann, he was a U.S. Army major who quit the military. He's Jewish. He quit because of his Jewish faith and said, I can't be part of what's going on. He just got out in June. And I asked him point blank, who was making the decisions? He said, it's Blinken and Biden, and it's Biden ultimately. Those the people making the decision. And for those who don't want to excuse Vice President Harris because she's part of administration, I understand it. But at this point, in a battleground state, you choose the person you want to negotiate against often. It might not be the perfect person. Vice President Harris, she's going to listen to all of us. We're coming from the same life experiences. And it'll be a compassionate, empathetic policy in the Middle East that might actually bring us to a just peace for both people. But Trump, it's he's with Miriam Adelson tonight, who wants the West Bank as a gift. I'll give you $50 million. You give the West Bank.
There will be beachfront property owned by her family and the legacy and what's his face, Jared Kushner. That is what will happen. And if that happens, when Donald's elected, you will alienate so many Jewish people too. I mean, that is not what we want. Even those people who would consider themselves, and I know the word Zionist is really loaded, so I'll use a different word, in support of Israel being a state. Even people who believe that, and most Jewish people do believe that, and most Jewish people also want a Palestinian state. All of us in that grouping are horrified by that prospect. That is not okay, and that is what Donald will bring. And I would just say, Kamala Harris doesn't control that policy or have much influence on it. It reminds me a little bit of JD Vance accusing her of waving a magic wand to allow Haitians to come to America under the TPS program. And I demolished that this morning on my show for saying, first of all, Joe Biden is the executive under Article 2, and he used his executive authority, which is in the Constitution. And these are the people who want so much executive authority that you can't even be criminally charged. So first of all, that was totally kosher, as we say, under the Constitution. And secondly, the idea of calling a magic wand is so pejorative. And so basically, and Kamala doesn't hold the so-called magic wand. And so basically what we're saying is anything, Democrats do, you don't like. But I would say the same thing to the folks who are not committed, which is Kamala did not hold that power. She just didn't. And I respect, though, I respect people deciding what they want to do and endorsing who they want to endorse. But I will also say the National Teamsters did not endorse Harris, and the local chapters are. So I would like people to think independently and say, I understand my organization, if they're part of uncommitted, doesn't want to do this. It's okay to speak out in your own community and on your own, saying, I get it, but the only vote against Donald is a vote for Kamala, and I'm doing that. And I wish more people would say that, because I think it would encourage people to do that.
Well, you mentioned the union. After you, we have Bill Carroll, the head of the Teamsters in his Council 39 in Wisconsin, and they endorsed Vice President Harris. And he's on to talk about that, and also what other locals, they call them, I guess, councils, but locals have endorsed Vice President Harris of the Teamsters in various battleground states. So it's
Can I tell you a funny Teamsters thing you can tell him?
Sure.
He might be listening. So, I live in a suburb of Detroit, not very far, a matter of miles away from where Jimmy Hoffa disappeared in 1975. And my parents moved into the house I'm sitting in right now, and they built it in 1975. And my father joked, because that's when we had the cement front porch poured, that Jimmy Hoffa was in our front porch. He is not. Just for instance, do not come dig it up. Do not. He disappeared at Macca's Red Fox restaurant. And whenever I went there and had their delicious macaroni and cheese as a child, I wondered, would he suddenly appear out from the kitchen?
Was he there buried in a booth or somewhere? I didn't know that's where he disappeared from, but I'm chatting with my friend, Professor Jennifer Taub. I'm trying to say your name correctly. I just can't. I'm going to say Taub forever. It's Taub?
Well, here's the deal. My great-grandfather, paternal great-grandfather, was from England before, and before that, Russia, as one is, and he called it like Taub. And then we came to America and said Taub, but like Taubman, like Al Taubman.
Taubman, okay.
Taubman, the guy who made, who went to prison for a price fixing in the art market, but is also better known for being a very generous philanthropist. Of course, I lead with the white collar crime, being a generous philanthropist and builder of shopping malls. and giver of money for many a thing. But yes, Taubman.
So
we're not related.
So let me ask you, because you're wearing, this is live via Zoom, and Jen's wearing her Harvard Law thing.
And my Seneca Project shirt.
Seneca Project, which is great stuff. Tara Satmeyer and Seneca, New York is where the women's suffrage movement first met. I think people know that from New York. If you don't, you know it now. You're wearing your Harvard Law thing. Harvard Law, very respected. What's wrong with Yale? And let's talk about JD Vance, who went to Yale, and Josh Hawley went to Yale, and did Tom Cotton? I'm not sure about Cotton. He may have went to Harvard. But in any event, you have JD Vance saying now, and you were touching on, that's why I wanted to ask you about it, that I don't care that the Haitians are here legally. I'm still going to call them illegal aliens. And it's very clear to me with MAGA, it's not enough that they want to deport brown people. Now they want to deport black people. And this is part of making America white again. So what's your reaction? And we also know from fact checking that JD Vance's team actually fact checked this lie about pets.
Oh my gosh. Right.
And they know it was not true. And they still went out there and said it. And now the new thing is, I don't care. I'm still going to call them illegal aliens, even though they're not, because his view of black people while married to a brown woman is that demeaning. This is where you're seeing a young version of white supremacist, segregationist, the same thing, a young George Wallace with him, and Trump's an old George Wallace. So what's your reaction to this garbage?
It's disgusting. It's racist. It's anti-American. It's craven. And this all started because Sassy disappeared. And Sassy the cat disappeared, right? And then, because and the woman whose cat disappeared went to that place that people can go when they are maybe ignorant or there's racism or anti-immigrant sentiment. And she became convinced that her neighbors who had immigrated from Haiti had done something with her cat. And I think maybe she said that to someone on a message board, or somehow this gets out of control, the telephone game, and JD Vance pounces. And so he decided to fact check the story. And as you said, he was told, no one's eating cats and dogs. And in fact, the owner has made it clear that the cat Sassy was found in the basement. And she even apologized to her neighbors. And
I'm sorry, I accuse you of eating Sassy.
Yes.
But there was like, why would we eat your cat, you weirdo?
I know. So the worst part of this story is like you're saying, that not only is JD Vance doubling down and accidentally admitting that he created the story, he is also now doing something, I think, a little bit deliberate. So on the one hand, he's trying to conflate people who come here lawfully with people who don't. But at the same time, don't fall into the trap of dehumanizing and condemning people who are here undocumented, right? Because I think that's like a little bit what's going on. Oh, you can hate on deport all those other people, not the Haitians, the people who do that. I haven't heard that happening yet, but I'm fearful, because the reality is, no matter how you got here, you are entitled to the protections of the U.S. Constitution. No, you don't get to vote. You have to pay taxes as well. And not only that, forget the law. You're entitled to, and you deserve, dignity as a human being, period. And so, yes, as the law will treat people differently, but JD Vance is claiming that the law that allowed them to come here is not valid, because essentially he doesn't like those people because those people aren't white. He didn't say that, right? But I'm wondering, but this is the implication. This is the implication. And because Donald Trump, as you know, has a lot of Russian immigrants living in a lot of his buildings, but they tend to be white. And so I do feel like this is a little bit, you say it's MAWA, Make America White Again. And I like Wawa. That is a fabulous convenience store. And I'm so sorry that MAWA is where we're headed, because I love myself a Wawa. I don't know about you.
I like Wawa. We don't have that many where I am, but I've been to many when I used to travel a lot as a comedian. But look, JD Vance has also talked about ignoring Supreme Court rulings that you don't agree with. Let them enforce it. He says, the idea that Andrew Jackson said that, which when I looked it up, it's attributed to Andrew Jackson. Apparently he never actually said that. But the point is, if you don't like a Supreme Court ruling, so they do not believe, it sounds hyperbolic to say they don't believe in our Constitution. They don't believe in the rule of law. It's literally what they are saying to us.
Yes.
They accuse us of that, and we sound like we're over the top and mirroring them. When JD Vance says, if you don't like a Supreme Court decision, don't adhere to it, don't follow it. Well, you're saying then the Constitution doesn't matter. That's one of the three branches of government. It's one of the key branches of government, as well as be a check on the executive and the Congress, but ignore it. He's real. I want people to know. I truly think he's a dangerous person. Honestly,
Oh yeah,
he's
I
a
think
threat
they've
to
gotten
our
to the
republic.
point. I think they've gotten to the point, as you're saying this light bulb went off in my head. And it wasn't one of those bright light bulbs. It was one of those like red, bloody, terrible light bulbs,
Oh,
scary ones, which is this. JD Vance, as soon as they got that ruling, I think, from the Supreme Court saying that a former, first of all, you can't, the policy isn't to prosecute a sitting president. So they're saying that the Supreme Court said a former president, as we know, for a whole bunch wider, basically any type of conduct that they engaged in that would either be considered at the core of their duties or anything that in their sort of course of official duties would be immune, right, from criminal prosecution. I think JD Vance has decided that he also is immune, or the law, I think he's decided that the laws do not apply to him or anyone else if the president they work for believes that law is invalid. I think that's how far out that they would go with his interpretation. I'm just listening to what he's saying. And he, if a Democratic president used their authority to do something, he's going to decide that it's not valid.
I'll read you the exact quote. JD Vance said, he said, and when the court stop you, stand before the country and say, and he said, Andrew Jackson quoted, goes, the Chief Justice has made his ruling. Now let him enforce it. So you're saying, I don't believe in it. He's also said, it's very interesting. The Bulwark had a quote from him that we're in a late Republican period. He doesn't mean Republican Party. He means the Republic as a nation, like our form of government. He goes, we're in a late Republican period. And if we're going to push back against it, we're going to have to get pretty wild and pretty far out there and go in directions that a lot of conservatives right now are uncomfortable with, this is JD Vance saying this. The idea, the idea of this is going to end, and they sense this republic that we live in is going to end, and they have to be ready to fill the void, grab the power, seize the power. That's JD Vance's exact quote. And it was lost in the fact that did he hump couches? That was kind of funny. That's why. So we talked about that.
Yeah.
And then the cat lady comments were dismissive and anti-woman. Those were important to cover. There are some deeper stuff about his view of this system we live in and really openly rejecting it and having a following out there, people who will reject the system. They don't believe in the Constitution. If you lose the election, you declare yourself the victor. You don't like a court ruling, you reject it, just move on. Let's see you enforce it now. Let's see if Chief Justice Roberts get a militia and enforce it. Yeah. This can't exist that we live in. This cannot continue if that's the other party.
I think about him as being very good at selling books and very good at selling, ideas, whether or not he believes them. And, when I'm pivoting a little bit, not entirely, I did read Hillbilly Elegy when it first came out. And I didn't realize what a weirdo he was at the time. And what he wrote in that book is diametrically opposed to his criticism of the Haitian immigrants, right? If you read the book, he writes a lot about how he was working in a factory and not a lot of Americans would do that or show up because they were lazy. And he really hated his fellow Americans and called, essentially called people in the poor white community, all these terrible things, and kind of blamed them for the opioid addiction, which is, as far as I'm concerned, you don't blame someone for their addiction for medical reasons, and also because Big Pharma helped foster that. But that's beside the point. The point is what these Haitian immigrants are doing is exactly what he said he wanted to do. He wanted to, he supposedly made a big announcement about moving home and wanting to revitalize aspects of the Rust Belt. And forgive me, Sherrod Brown, he doesn't like it to call the Rust Belt the industrial Midwest, whatever you want to call it. He wanted to rebuild Ohio. I mean, lest we forget, because I sometimes do, he is the flipping senator. He is a senator from Ohio. He is insulting his constituents, including those who vote in Springfield, Ohio. I've never seen, Donald Trump is bad. And yet JD Vance knows what he's doing and could control his behavior. Donald is who he is, and we should not let him out of his cage. He's just nuts. JD Vance is craven, and he is using, and he's younger.
Far younger, much more dangerous.
And he wears less makeup, but they're still bad men.
Can we, on the last point here, let's have a little fun. Here is, speaking of Donald Trump, here is on Gutfeld yesterday, which is a charade of a comedy show. You laugh at it, not with it. They're not intentionally funny. And here is Donald Trump. Matt, let's play clip number 7, please.
They even said, but all of them, and they didn't correct her once, and they corrected me everything I said practically. and I think 9 times or 11 times. And the audience was absolutely, they went crazy.
So he's talking about the debate last week. The audience went crazy. So do you want to tell people, in case I think everyone knows this, but I'm missing something here.
Yeah, Dean, I hope you're sitting down, but there was no audience. But Dean, in fairness, he can't tell the difference between an empty auditorium and a full one because his crowds are always leaving. So maybe he's so used to seeing people leave that he pretends there's an audience when there isn't.
His brain, there was an audience. And look, the day before he did a town hall with Sarah Huckabee, whatever her name is. And he said,
Flint, Michigan, yes.
In Michigan, we are energy independent. He said, we have Bagram in Alaska. And he said, has more oil than Saudi Arabia. Check it out, Bagram. Bagram is not Alaska. It's Afghanistan. It's the military base. If Joe Biden had done this 2 days in a row, the media would have went ballistic about it. And and I saw MS them covering a little bit, but CNN and the others are not having serious conversations about, you can't keep washing us. You can't keep dismissing this stuff. We all get it. It's also why polling shows Vice President Harris forget head to head on issues like today. An AP poll came out. More Americans think she would be tougher as a president for our nation than Donald Trump, which was really bad for a guy who admires strongmen, that she's viewed as tougher now. And I think part of it's the cognitive decline. People see this and they go, it's just not the same guy. That's the reality.
So I actually have the receipts on this. He might have meant the Ellison Air Force Base in Alaska or not, but it's actually quite a distance from Bagram, Afghanistan. And of course, the base in Bagram closed in 2021. It's 5,276 miles away. But I want to fact check the other piece, Dean. He said that this Air Force base, whether the one in Bagram or if he meant the one in Alaska, was larger than Saudi. But actually, the entire state of Alaska, 665,000 square miles, is actually smaller than Saudi, which is 830 square miles. And the base in Alaska is only 77,000 square miles. Because I ask myself, is it even close to true? It's not even in the flippin' ballpark.
I watched last night. I'll let you go on this, but I was watching some of his rally last night, and we all know the number, or most people, it's 20,000 Haitian immigrants have been in the last few years brought to or been welcomed to Springfield. So he said, he's been saying 20. Last night he said 31,000. Like, it doesn't matter anymore. You just make up any number and the crowd cheer. Not they don't cheer that number. They cheer, these black people have to go, and they cheer it. But Jen, if people want to see your Jen Taub live or Taub live, where can they go? It's every day, 8 a.m. Eastern time. I'll do the British pronunciation. Jen Taub. So,
I like it. Yeah, no. So it's just go to YouTube and type in Jen Taub, JenTaub. And you'll find me 8 a.m. Eastern. It usually goes about 40 minutes. If there's some extra news, we just take it to the bottom of the hour. But yeah, join me top of the hour, 8 a.m. Eastern. And on Saturdays, I have a special 4 p.m. show because, stuff happens over the weekends. And I sometimes take a deeper dive on Saturdays into stuff that we couldn't fully, there's a lot to cover every day of the week. So we look a little more closely. And I might actually turn the Saturday show into an interview show as well.
Wow. Well, there is a lot to cover. That's why I do 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. All right, Jen, thanks so much for being on.